Ethan Cole hated diplomatic assignments, not because they were dangerous. In fact, that was the problem. They were usually boring. His shuttle descended through the upper atmosphere of Arcanus Prime, a planet so wealthy that even its clouds were regulated by weather satellites the size of cities. Through the window, Ethan watched enormous floating gardens drift between silver towers that stretched dozens of kilometers into the sky. The pilot glanced at him. "First time on Arcanus?" "First and hopefully last," the pilot laughed. "Most people say it's the most beautiful world in this sector." Ethan shrugged. "Beautiful worlds usually charge 18 credits for coffee." "Fair point." The shuttle landed inside the diplomatic crown, the largest political complex in known space. Thousands of ships occupied the surrounding docks. Human vessels, Vampire Empire vessels, merchant guild cruisers, military escorts, scientific delegations. The entire galaxy seemed to have gathered in one place. Ethan stepped onto the platform, carrying a metal case filled with diagnostic equipment. Officially, he was there to inspect a malfunctioning translation network hidden beneath the palace. Unofficially, nobody cared about him, which was exactly how he liked it. As he crossed the terminal, enormous holographic displays projected news from hundreds of worlds, trade agreements, border disputes, scientific discoveries. One headline caught his attention: "The Vampire Queen arrives today." A giant image appeared above the crowd. The queen looked almost human. Almost. Her pale face possessed an unnatural elegance, while her long ears revealed her alien ancestry. Silver white hair flowed over dark ceremonial armor. Her crimson eyes stared directly toward the camera. The surrounding travelers immediately lowered their voices. Even Ethan could feel the respect, or fear, possibly both. "That's Queen Seraphina," a nearby merchant whispered. "No kidding. They say she can remember every face she's ever seen." "That sounds exhausting." The merchant blinked. "What? Imagine remembering every embarrassing person you've ever met." The merchant slowly walked away. Ethan sighed. That happened more often than he liked. Hours later, after completing his initial inspection underground, Ethan finally emerged into the upper levels of the palace. The diplomatic reception had already begun. Massive crystal chandeliers floated without visible support. Artificial stars glowed across the ceiling. Hundreds of alien diplomats mingled beneath shimmering fields of light. Ethan had absolutely no business being there. Unfortunately, his supervisor disagreed. "Smile," the older engineer told him. "I'm smiling. You look like you're preparing for surgery." "I'd rather perform surgery." "You repair translators." "Exactly," the supervisor groaned. Ethan grabbed a drink from a passing service drone and wandered toward the edge of the hall. His plan was simple: remain invisible, eat free food, leave. A flawless strategy. For nearly 20 minutes, it worked. Then the queen arrived. The entire chamber became silent. The towering doors opened. Elite guards entered first. Behind them walked Seraphina. She moved with calm confidence. Her long ears were adorned with silver ornaments. Her crimson eyes scanned the room. Politicians immediately straightened their posture. Military officers suddenly remembered how to stand properly. One diplomat nearly dropped his drink. Ethan quietly moved farther away. Royalty had a strange ability to attract trouble. Unfortunately, trouble seemed determined to find him. While adjusting one of the tools clipped to his belt, he accidentally brushed against a damaged metallic edge. Ouch! A shallow cut appeared across his palm. Only a few drops of blood emerged. Nothing serious. He reached for a cleaning cloth. Then something strange happened. At the opposite end of the hall, Seraphina stopped walking. Completely. The queen froze mid-step. The silence deepened. Her guards exchanged confused glances. Seraphina's eyes narrowed. For a moment, she looked almost frightened. Then she turned directly toward Ethan. The enormous chamber seemed to shrink. 1,000 conversations died simultaneously. Every eye followed her gaze. Ethan looked behind himself. Maybe someone important was standing there. Nobody. Just him. "Oh no," he muttered. The queen began walking, straight toward him. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The entire hall watched. Ethan considered hiding behind a decorative plant. Unfortunately, the plant was smaller than he was. Seraphina stopped only a few feet away. Her crimson eyes stared at the small cut on his hand. A strange emotion crossed her face: shock, disbelief, recognition. The queen inhaled slowly. The scent of his blood seemed to strike her like a physical force. Her expression changed, not into anger, not into suspicion, something far more mysterious. Her voice emerged as barely a whisper. "You." The room remained silent. Ethan swallowed. "I can explain the bleeding." Seraphina ignored him. Her eyes widened. For the first time, the immortal queen looked less like a ruler and more like someone staring at a ghost. Then she spoke words that shattered the entire evening. "You saved me when I was 8 years old." Nobody in the hall moved. For several long seconds, the only sound came from the floating chandeliers, softly humming above the diplomats. Ethan stared at Queen Seraphina. Seraphina stared at Ethan. A senior ambassador suddenly dropped a glass. The crash echoed through the chamber and seemed to wake everyone from their shock. Whispers exploded in every direction. What did she say? Did she say saved? How old is the human? Older than 8, I hope. The last comment earned a few nervous laughs. Ethan raised both hands. "I think there's been some kind of mistake." Seraphina's crimson eyes never left him. "No." The certainty in her voice silenced the room again. "I know that scent." Ethan blinked. "That's somehow more concerning than reassuring." A nearby guard struggled not to smile. The queen ignored the comment. She slowly stepped closer. For a moment, Ethan wondered if vampire queens normally identified people through blood scents. Then he remembered he had never met a vampire queen before, so he lacked a useful comparison. Seraphina extended her hand. "Come with me." Ethan glanced toward his supervisor. The older engineer looked ready to faint. "Should I go?" "Are you seriously asking me?" the supervisor whispered. "She's a queen." "Fair." 10 minutes later, Ethan found himself inside a private royal chamber overlooking the endless lights of Arcanus Prime. The room was surprisingly simple. No golden throne, no giant statues, no dramatic displays of power. Just elegant furniture, advanced holographic systems, and a panoramic window stretching from floor to ceiling. Seraphina stood near the glass, the city lights reflected in her crimson eyes. Several guards remained outside the chamber. Inside, only Ethan and the queen remained. The silence lingered. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I should probably mention that I don't remember saving any queens." A small smile appeared on Seraphina's face. "At the time, I wasn't a queen." "That sounds cheaper." She actually laughed. The sound surprised both of them. For a brief moment, she looked younger, less like a ruler, more like a normal woman. Then her expression became serious again. "When I was 8 years old, my family was attacked." Ethan, listen quietly. "The royal vessel carrying us through the frontier was destroyed. Assassins boarded the ship. My parents were killed." The words were calm. Too calm, like someone describing a scar that had existed for a very long time. "I escaped in a damaged emergency pod." Ethan sat down. Seraphina continued. "The pod crashed on a mining colony near the edge of explored space. Something stirred faintly in the back of his mind. A distant sensation, not a memory, just a feeling. Dust, metal, cold air. Then, it vanished." "I was alone," Seraphina said. "Injured, terrified." Her eyes met his. "Then I met a human boy." Ethan frowned. "A boy?" He couldn't have been older than 10. The strange feeling returned. A rusty corridor, broken lights, a child running. Again it disappeared before he could grasp it. "The assassins found me," Seraphina continued. "The boy hid me inside abandoned maintenance tunnels." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I honestly don't remember any of this." "I know." The queen moved toward a nearby table. A hologram appeared above it. Ancient colony records, star maps, old security files. Most of them were corrupted. Many sections were missing, almost intentionally. "I've spent 25 years searching for him." Ethan stared. 25 years? "Yes. That's an incredibly long search." Seraphina folded her arms. "You have no idea." Ethan pointed toward himself. "Meanwhile, I spent those years trying to remember where I leave my tools." For the second time, the queen laughed. The tension eased slightly. Then she activated another hologram. A faded image appeared. A frontier colony, damaged structures, mining equipment, emergency shelters. Ethan suddenly felt a sharp pulse inside his head. A flash. A frightened little girl with unusually long ears. A narrow corridor. Heavy footsteps approaching. A child's voice saying, "Stay quiet." The vision disappeared instantly. Ethan grabbed the edge of the chair. Seraphina immediately noticed. What happened? I don't know. His heart was racing. For the first time, he wasn't completely certain she was wrong. The queen slowly approached. What did you see? Ethan hesitated. Then he looked directly into her eyes. I think, he said quietly, I think I've seen that colony before. Outside the chamber, neither of them noticed the small surveillance device hidden beneath a decorative panel. A tiny red light blinked once, somewhere far beyond Arcanus Prime. An encrypted signal awakened after 25 years of silence. And someone who had worked very hard to bury an old secret finally learned that the secret was beginning to wake up. The following morning, Ethan discovered that becoming the center of an interstellar mystery was significantly more exhausting than repairing translation systems. He hadn't even finished breakfast before 3 royal advisors, 2 intelligence officers, and a medical specialist were waiting outside his guest suite. The medical specialist held a scanner. The scanner looked alarmingly large. Ethan pointed at it. That's either medical equipment or a weapon. It is medical equipment. That doesn't answer my concern. The specialist sighed. Royal advisors apparently lacked a sense of humor. 20 minutes later, Ethan sat inside one of the palace's advanced diagnostic chambers while dozens of holographic displays floated around him. Streams of data filled the air. Neural activity, genetic analysis, memory patterns. The technology was centuries beyond anything he had worked with before. Queen Seraphina stood nearby observing the results. Her silver-white hair was tied back today, and without the ceremonial armor, she appeared less intimidating, at least until she looked directly at someone. Then she immediately became intimidating again. One of the scientists frowned. Interesting. Nobody liked hearing scientists say that. What kind of interesting? Ethan asked. Good interesting? Or we're all going to die interesting? The scientist ignored him, also not reassuring. Several minutes later, another display appeared. The room fell silent. The specialist enlarged part of Ethan's neural map. A section of his memory pathways looked abnormal, artificial, modified. The scientist looked at Seraphina. Your Majesty, these memories were removed. The Queen's expression hardened. Removed? Not naturally. The specialist zoomed in further. Someone deliberately altered his neural structure. Ethan stared at the hologram. You're telling me somebody edited my brain? Essentially. Can I request a refund? For a brief second, even the scientist almost smiled. Seraphina didn't. She was staring at the display with growing concern. Years of searching had already convinced her something unusual had happened. Now she finally had proof. Someone had erased part of Ethan's childhood. The question was why? Hours later, they relocated to the palace archive. The structure extended deep beneath the city. Thousands of quantum storage chambers preserved records from across centuries. Towering columns of light stretched upward into darkness. Autonomous drones floated silently between the shelves. Ethan followed Seraphina through the immense chamber. I thought archives would be more boring. They usually are. This place looks like it could launch a fleet. It probably can. Ethan stopped walking. You're joking. I am not. He immediately continued walking. The Queen was becoming increasingly difficult to predict. They reached a sealed archive containing records from the frontier colonies. Ancient data cubes emerged from storage units. Holographic projections illuminated the room. Names, locations, security reports, evacuation records. Most files from the period surrounding the attack had been corrupted or deleted. Entire sections were missing. Not random sections, specific sections. Someone had carefully selected exactly what to remove. The Queen studied the damage. This was intentional. Ethan nodded. Definitely. A maintenance drone floated past them. Suddenly, it stopped. Its optical sensors flickered. Then it projected a small image. A forgotten colony, dust-covered buildings, mining towers, a damaged landing platform. Ethan froze. The image struck him harder than expected. Another flash appeared inside his mind. A narrow tunnel, metal walls, someone crying, small hands clutching his sleeve. His pulse accelerated. The vision vanished, but this time a single detail remained. A name, not complete, just part of one. Rena, Seraphina immediately noticed. What happened? Ethan pressed a hand against his forehead. I heard something. What? I don't know. He closed his eyes. The memory was already slipping away, but one thing remained certain. The colony felt familiar, far too familiar. Later that evening, they reviewed surviving surveillance footage recovered from damaged archives. Most recordings were useless, static, corrupted data, broken timestamps. Then they found one file, only 6 seconds long. The footage showed a dark service corridor, a small figure running, another child pulling her toward a maintenance hatch. The image quality was terrible. Faces were impossible to identify, but the little girl's unusually long ears were clearly visible. Seraphina stopped breathing. For years, she had possessed no evidence, only memories. Now she was staring at proof. The young queen touched the hologram carefully, as though it might disappear. Ethan looked at the image. Something deep inside him stirred. Not a memory, not yet, but close, very close. Neither of them noticed the archive supervisor quietly leaving the room, nor did they see him activate a concealed communicator once he entered a private corridor. His voice remained calm. "The Queen has found the footage," a distorted voice answered. "Has the human remembered anything?" "Not enough." A brief silence followed. Then the unknown speaker replied, "That will change soon." The communication ended. Far beyond the palace, hidden among the dark regions between stars, ancient systems began awakening. Encrypted databases unlocked. Dormant agents received orders. Old names resurfaced. A secret that had remained buried for 25 years was no longer sleeping. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, people who feared that secret were beginning to move. 3 days after the archive discovery, the atmosphere inside the palace had changed. Officially, the diplomatic summit continued as planned. Trade agreements were signed. Political speeches filled the grand halls. Delegates smiled for cameras and exchanged ceremonial gifts. Unofficially, Queen Seraphina had mobilized a quiet investigation that reached across dozens of star systems. The search was no longer about finding a childhood savior. Now it was about discovering who had spent 25 years hiding the truth. Ethan sat inside a secure analysis chamber surrounded by holographic displays. Thousands of documents floated through the air. Ancient ship manifests, military records, colonial databases, financial transactions. Most people would have gone insane after reviewing so much information. Ethan had somehow adapted, mostly because he treated the investigation like a broken machine. Every secret had components. Every lie left traces. Every cover-up required maintenance. And maintenance always left fingerprints. A young intelligence officer entered carrying a stack of data crystals. "More records," Ethan groaned. "Wonderful. My favorite thing. You don't sound excited." "I repair translation networks." He pointed toward the mountain of files. "This is the emotional equivalent of being buried alive." The officer laughed despite herself. Across the room, Seraphina was reviewing another collection of recovered documents. The Queen's expression grew darker with every passing hour, because a pattern was finally emerging. The original attack against her family had never been a simple coup. Too many organizations had benefited. Too many records had vanished. Too many witnesses had disappeared. Someone powerful had coordinated everything. A notification suddenly appeared above one of the consoles. The room became silent. An encrypted file had been recovered from a forgotten military archive. The timestamp dated back 25 years. Seraphina immediately approached. "Open it!" The technician obeyed. A holographic image appeared. An unknown military commander stood before the camera. His face was partially obscured. His voice had been distorted, yet his words were perfectly clear. "So the child must not survive." The room froze. The commander continued, "Terminate the royal bloodline. Remove all witnesses. Erase all records associated with Operation Eclipse." The recording ended. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Ethan looked toward the technician. "Well?" The technician blinked. "Well, what?" "That seems bad." Nobody laughed. Ethan sighed. "Tough crowd." Seraphina remained focused on the recording. Operation Eclipse. The name appeared nowhere in official history. Yet, dozens of deleted files referenced it. A hidden operation, a hidden conspiracy, a hidden enemy. Hours later, Ethan and the Queen traveled to a classified archive orbiting one of the Empire's oldest worlds. The station itself was ancient. Its metallic corridors stretched through a massive, artificial asteroid. Automated defense systems guarded every entrance. Inside, forgotten records from centuries of galactic history were preserved. As they explored deeper levels, they finally found something extraordinary. AC sealed datas. Protected by encryption so advanced that even modern systems struggled to access it. The station's artificial intelligence worked for nearly an hour before succeeding. When the database opened, thousands of names appeared. Military leaders, politicians, corporate executives, intelligence officials, all connected to one organization, the Eclipse Directorate. Seraphina stared at the list. Eclipse wasn't an operation. No, Ethan said quietly. It was a group. The realization settled heavily over the room. The directorate had existed for decades, possibly longer, operating in secret, influencing governments, manipulating conflicts, eliminating threats, and somehow they had considered an 8-year-old refugee important enough to murder. Another file opened automatically. This one contained a psychological assessment. The report described an ancient prediction discovered on a lost world. A prophecy. The words filled the holographic screen. A child of night shall survive, because of a child of distant stars. Together, they shall break the hidden throne. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Then, Ethan pointed at the text. I would like to officially complain about being involved in a prophecy. Seraphina looked at him. You don't believe it? I barely believe my alarm clock. The queen shook her head. A faint smile appeared despite everything, for the first time in days. Then another document emerged. This one mentioned a human child. No name, no identity, only a reference. Witness 7, memory removal authorized, risk level unacceptable. Ethan felt cold. The room suddenly seemed smaller. The report continued. Neural modification successful. Subject relocated, future monitoring approved. Nobody spoke. The meaning was obvious. Someone had erased his memories. Someone had watched him afterward. Not for months, not for years, for decades. The queen's crimson eyes narrowed. They monitored you your entire life. Ethan stared at the report. That's honestly rude. A nearby officer laughed before quickly pretending not to. Then the station lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Warning symbols suddenly appeared across every screen. The station AI spoke. Unauthorized intrusion detected. Everyone turned toward the displays. Dozens of systems were being hacked simultaneously. Security networks, communication relays, archive controls. Someone was trying to destroy the database. Right now, the queen's expression hardened instantly. The atmosphere changed. The ruler returned. Lock every system, the AI responded. Attempting, Ethan moved toward the nearest console. Outside the station, hidden among the stars, unknown ships had appeared. Dark vessels, with no identification signals, no diplomatic codes, no registry numbers, watching, waiting. The Eclipse Directorate had finally realized that their buried secret was no longer buried, and they were no longer content to watch from the shadows. Red warning lights flooded the archive station. The calm atmosphere vanished instantly. Across every corridor, security systems awakened from decades of inactivity. Heavy blast doors sealed themselves. Defense turrets emerged from hidden compartments. The artificial intelligence continued broadcasting alerts. External intrusion escalating. Communication systems compromised. Archive integrity threatened. Ethan stared at the nearest display. What kind of people attack a library? One of the security officers checked a tactical screen. The dangerous kind. Good point. Outside the station, unidentified vessels drifted through the darkness like predators circling prey. They carried no insignias, no registration codes. Nothing linked them to any government. Officially, they did not exist, which made them even more dangerous. Queen Seraphina stood at the center of the command room. Her calm expression had returned. The same expression that probably terrified enemy admirals across half the galaxy. Can they destroy the database remotely? She asked. The station administrator shook his head. No, they need direct access. Then they'll try to board us. Almost immediately, another warning appeared. Multiple hostile transport craft detected. Ethan sighed. Sometimes I miss repairing broken translators. The administrator looked at him. Why? Translators rarely shoot at me. The first impact shook the station. Metal groaned throughout the structure. Several officers rushed toward tactical stations. Holographic displays filled the room. Dozens of hostile boarding craft were approaching. Meanwhile, another battle was taking place. Not with weapons, with information. The Eclipse Directorate's hackers continued attacking the archives. Every second increased the risk of losing priceless evidence. Ethan suddenly noticed something unusual. A data stream moving through the station's systems. Hidden, disguised, carefully concealed. His engineering instincts immediately focused on it. Wait, Several people turned toward him. "What is it?" Seraphina asked. Ethan pointed toward the display. "That signal." The station administrator frowned. "I don't see anything." "Exactly," the administrator blinked. "That doesn't help." Ethan moved closer. The hidden code was piggybacking on legitimate archive traffic, almost invisible, almost. Someone had spent years designing it, but they had made one mistake. They had built it like a machine, and machines always revealed patterns. A few minutes later, Ethan isolated the signal. The room became silent as encrypted coordinates appeared. One set of coordinates, then another, then dozens. The hidden network stretched across multiple star systems. Secret listening posts, observation satellites, monitoring stations. The directorate had been watching more than Ethan, much more, for decades. Seraphina studied the information. They built an entire surveillance network. "Looks expensive," Ethan replied. One officer laughed. Another impact rattled the station, this one stronger. The enemy boarding operation had begun. Security teams moved into position. Energy rifles charged. Defensive shields activated. For a moment, Ethan expected Seraphina to remain inside the command center. She was a queen. Important people usually stayed behind layers of protection. Instead, she picked up an elegant energy blade from a weapon rack. Ethan stared. "You are personally going?" Seraphina looked at him. "Of course." You realize that's exactly what heroes say before things become complicated. A small smile appeared. "I'll keep that in mind." The battle remained distant for now. Reports flowed into the command center. Boarding teams intercepted. Corridors secured. Enemy casualties rising. Yet something felt wrong. The directorate wasn't behaving like people desperate to win. They were behaving like people buying time. Ethan noticed it first. "They're distracting us." The room grew quiet. Seraphina turned toward him. "Explain." "The archive." He pointed toward the main database. "They don't care about taking the station." Understanding spread across several faces. The borders were a diversion. The real target remained the information. Then a security officer shouted, "Unauthorized access detected in Vault 12. Everyone froze. Vault 12. The section containing the recovered Eclipse files. The attackers had found another way inside. Seraphina immediately moved. "With me." Moments later, they raced through metallic corridors alongside security teams. The station trembled repeatedly. Distant weapons fire echoed through the structure. When they reached Vault 12, the blast door stood open. The guards assigned there were unconscious, but alive. Inside, rows of archive chambers filled the room. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Then Ethan saw it. A small device attached to the central storage unit. Compact, sophisticated, and counting down. The administrator turned pale. A quantum eraser. Nobody liked the sound of that. "What does it do?" Ethan asked. "It permanently destroys every file within range." "Definitely don't like the sound of that." The timer continued ticking. 30 seconds remained. 29, 28. The security team rushed forward, but even before they moved, Ethan was already running toward the device. And somewhere in the deepest corners of his mind, another forgotten memory stirred. A frightened child, a dark corridor, a little girl with long ears hiding behind him, and the overwhelming feeling that someone needed his help. Just like before, 25 years ago, the timer continued counting down. 23 seconds, 22, 21. The small quantum eraser sat attached to the archive core like a silent predator. Security officers immediately began scanning it. Their expressions worsened. One finally looked at Seraphina. "We can't remove it safely." Ethan didn't stop moving. "That's encouraging." Touching the wrong component could trigger it instantly. Less encouraging. The timer reached 18 seconds. The room filled with tension, centuries of evidence, thousands of recovered files, every clue they had uncovered. All of it could vanish forever. Ethan dropped to one knee beside the device. Its surface was covered in unfamiliar symbols, but technology always spoke a language. Power, control, logic. Someone had built this machine, which meant someone could understand it. The countdown continued. 15. 14. Ethan focused completely. The world around him faded. Then something unexpected happened. A memory surfaced. Not a fragment, not a flash. A real memory. A maintenance tunnel. Old mining equipment. A The fright little girl sitting beside him, her long ears trembled as distant footsteps echoed through the corridor. I don't want them to find me. The girl's voice sounded small, terrified. Ethan remembered himself answering, Why? They won't. You don't know that. No. A young Ethan had smiled. But worrying won't help. The girl looked confused. How are you not scared? Who says I'm not scared? The memory vanished. Ethan blinked. The timer read 11 seconds. He suddenly understood the device. Not because of the memory, because his mind had finally stopped fighting itself. The missing pieces were beginning to reconnect. Move back, he said. Nobody argued. His fingers moved rapidly across the control surface. 7 seconds. 6, 5. A hidden panel opened. The device emitted a sharp tone. Several officers instinctively stepped away. 3 seconds. 2, 1. The countdown stopped. Silence. Absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the device powered down. The room exploded with relief. Several officers laughed. One actually sat on the floor. Ethan leaned backward. I would like everyone to appreciate how stressful that was. The administrator wiped sweat from his forehead. We appreciate it. Good. A moment later, the station lights stabilized. The archive had survived. More importantly, so had the evidence. But something else had changed. The memory. This time it had felt different, stronger, more complete. Seraphina noticed immediately. You remembered something? Ethan nodded slowly. Yes. The Queen waited. He stared at the disabled device. I remember her. The room became quiet again, not because of danger, because everyone understood the importance of those words. For years, Seraphina had searched for answers. Now, those answers were finally beginning to emerge. Hours later, the battle around the station ended. The remaining hostile ships retreated after suffering heavy losses. For the first time, the Eclipse Directorate had failed. The archive remained intact, the evidence survived, and Ethan's memories were returning. Back aboard Seraphina's flagship, the atmosphere felt different, calmer, almost peaceful. The Queen and Ethan stood together inside an observation chamber overlooking the stars. Thousands of points of light drifted across the darkness. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Seraphina finally broke the silence. What do you remember? Ethan leaned against the transparent alloy window. Not everything. Her expression remained patient. But enough. He looked toward the stars. I remember finding a damaged escape pod. The Queen remained completely still. I remember hearing someone crying inside. Another memory surfaced, this one clearer than before. A young girl with pale skin and long ears, covered in dust, trying very hard not to cry, failing. I gave her my lunch. A faint smile appeared on Seraphina's face. You did. I remember, because I was angry about it. The Queen blinked. What? It was my favorite sandwich. For a moment, Seraphina simply stared at him. Then she laughed, a genuine laugh. The sound filled the chamber. I've spent 25 years searching for my savior. You found a child who lost his lunch. The Queen shook her head. You hid me. More memories emerged. Maintenance tunnels, old service passages, abandoned mining sections, a frightened child following him through the darkness. Then another image appeared. The clearest one yet. Several armed figures wearing dark armor. A strange symbol on one of their shoulders. A black circle crossed by a silver line. Ethan froze. The image remained. Unlike the others, it refused to disappear. I remember something else. Seraphina immediately became serious. What? The attackers. His voice grew quieter. They carried a symbol. The Queen activated a nearby display. Hundreds of known insignias appeared. Military factions, corporate logos, ancient organizations. Ethan studied them carefully, then pointed. There. The room became silent. The symbol matched a file recovered from the archive. A symbol linked directly to the Eclipse Directorate. For the first time, they now possessed something invaluable. Not speculation, not theory, a witness, a real witness, even if that witness had been 10 years old at the time. The Queen stared at the symbol, then at Ethan. You can identify them. I think so. A new determination appeared in her crimson eyes. The search was ending. The hunt was beginning. Far beyond known space, hidden deep inside a region of dead stars, a masked figure watched reports arriving from across the galaxy. The archive attack had failed. The human remembered more. The Queen was getting closer. The figure slowly closed the report, then issued a single order. Prepare the fortress. For the first time in 25 years, the leaders of the Eclipse Directorate were no longer hunting a child. Now they were preparing for war. The fortress existed where no civilization should have survived. Hidden inside a dying nebula beyond the mapped borders of known space, the Eclipse Directorate had spent decades constructing its final refuge. Massive black structures drifted between crimson clouds of ionized gas. Ancient defense platforms guarded every approach. Stealth satellite monitored entire sectors. For years, the Directorate had ruled from the shadows. Now the shadows had finally been discovered. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace in waves. Thousands of vessels filled the darkness. Imperial warships, Earth vessels, merchant guild escorts, independent defense fleets, old rivals now united by a common enemy. Aboard the flagship, Ethan stood beside Queen Seraphina as the final operation began. The sight outside the observation window was breathtaking and terrifying. That's a lot of ships. It is, Seraphina agreed. I hope somebody brought a map. The Queen smiled. Even now, even here. He still found ways to make her laugh. The fleet advanced. The fortress opened fire. Energy beams crossed the darkness. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden hangars. The final battle had begun. Yet the real victory came not through weapons. It came through truth. Using the recovered archives, Seraphina transmitted the Directorate's secrets across every major communication network in the galaxy. The evidence spread faster than any fleet could travel. Secret assassinations, political manipulation, memory alterations, corruption, conspiracies, 25 years of lies exposed within hours. Systems that had secretly supported the Directorate abandoned them. Hidden allies vanished. Operatives surrendered. The organization began collapsing from within. By the time Allied forces reached the fortress, the Directorate was already dying. Inside the central command structure, Ethan and Seraphina finally confronted the people responsible. The leaders looked older than expected. Not monsters, not mythical villains. Just frightened individuals who had spent decades protecting power. One of them stared directly at Ethan. You should have forgotten. Ethan looked at him calmly. I did. The man smiled. Then why are you here? For a moment, Ethan thought about everything that had happened. The missing memories. The years stolen from him, the people hurt because of the Directorate. Then he thought about a frightened little girl hiding in a maintenance tunnel, a girl who had survived because somebody chose to help. Because forgetting something doesn't erase the truth. The silence that followed seemed to echo through the chamber. The Directorate's leaders were arrested. Their databases were seized. Their hidden networks dismantled. 25 years after the attack, justice finally arrived. Weeks later, the galaxy felt different, quieter, healthier. The endless fear surrounding the conspiracy had disappeared. Trade routes reopened. Old political tensions eased. Investigations continued across hundreds of worlds. The future no longer belonged to the Directorate. It belonged to everyone else. Ethan eventually returned to Arcanus Prime. Not as an engineer nobody noticed. Not as a mystery. Not as a forgotten witness. For the first time in years he understood who he was. His missing memories had returned. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to remember the frightened child he had protected. Enough to remember that one small act of kindness could change a life. Perhaps many lives. One evening, he stood with Seraphina in the royal gardens overlooking the illuminated city. The same city where their journey had truly begun. The Queen seemed unusually quiet. Thinking? Ethan asked. Yes. Dangerous activity. She rolled her eyes. I spent years searching for you. You found me. I did. A comfortable silence settled between them. The city lights shimmered below. Flying vehicles moved between distant towers. Stars glowed overhead. Then Seraphina spoke softly. When I was 8 years old, I thought I would die. Ethan listened. You gave me food. He laughed. It was still my favorite sandwich. The Queen smiled. You hid me. You were scared. I was. Her crimson eyes met his. You treated me like an ordinary... Because you were. The Queen's smile widened. Most people don't speak to me that way. Most people are smarter than me. This time she laughed openly. The sound carried through the gardens. For a moment neither queen nor engineer mattered. Only two people sharing a memory that had survived assassins, conspiracies, erased records, and 25 years of separation. The future remained uncertain. The galaxy would always have new problems, new discoveries, new mysteries. But this chapter was complete. The frightened little girl had become a queen. The forgetful engineer had become something more than a witness to history. And both finally understood the truth that had connected them all along. Not prophecy, not destiny, not blood. A simple act of kindness. Sometimes that was enough to change the course of an entire galaxy. As the stars shone above Arcanus Prime, Ethan and Seraphina stood together watching the future unfold before them, no longer searching for answers, because at last they had found them.